Hey guys, what's up? Resident coach Matt Griffiths here. I'm just going to bring you some information, and it kind of ties into what I went live last night and talked about, and I thought, you know what, it's fresh in my head and people are asking questions. I'll try and tackle the topic, and I would highly advise any of you guys on there, if you have got these kind of questions, not just me, speak to Emil, Philip, Chris, etc. We'll all happily put out these live videos, because writing gets convoluted at times and what people are actually saying gets misinterpreted, so it's much easier to actually talk to you people, and we respect you also, and we respect your contribution, so it's nice to be able to get online and actually have a chat. Now, I've had a few people comment since I've been doing the live videos. I've had a few direct messages come through, simply noting, yeah, I'm a big guy, okay? And people have been asking me what the sort of secret is to it. Now, I'll be honest, a lot of it's genetic. I'm a big guy in frame. I'm part Icelandic and part English, so effectively my genes have sort of come from an area where the average height of a man is 6'2". You know, I am distinctly average in height when I go back home, and then you will have all seen Hafthor Bjornsson, the Mountain from Game of Thrones. He's an Icelandic chap. He's 6'9". His grandfather's 7 foot tall. You know, it's just a taller, a bigger breed of people, really. And I carry some of that. So, Brendan, how we doing, buddy? But then the other side of the coin is I have been involved in strength sports for many years. Now, this often gets overlooked, and I've seen members of this forum who I've got as personal friends having conversations with various people, and I see bits of advice coming in from all sorts of places, and everyone's on about torch this fat, burn this fat, do this, do that, do the other, which is fantastic. But these people are also looking to build some muscle mass. Now, we know building muscle mass increases the body's thermogenic response, and it increases the body's at-rest energy rate. So your metabolic rate at rest increases, so you actually require more food. It actually makes burning fat easier, which is why bodybuilders can shred up very quickly. Not only do they understand the protocol and they hire coaches to deal with these things for them, but because of the amount of muscle mass they have and the key, obviously the nutrition, they're spot on with everything, they're able to target and burn this off with minimal loss of muscle tissue. Now, when people are asking me, I have never actually trained for aesthetics or size. But what I wanted to cover today is a word that gets thrown around and used all the time in training incorrectly. And I've seen it happen for many an individual and many a coach. Now, depending on which side of the Atlantic you sit will depend on how this is pronounced. I've heard it pronounced multiple different ways, and there is no actually correct way of saying it. I've heard it called hypertrophy or hypertrophy. Now, whichever way you want to look at it, that's fine. And everyone assumes this is related to growth in terms of the way a bodybuilder trains. It's not 100% incorrect, because hypertrophy is effectively meaning to grow when you boil down to the breakdown of the words. But I wanted to cover something here because there are different types of hypertrophy and only one gets referred to. Okay? So I'm going to use this little whiteboard here, and I'm going to do my best artisan skills. So you'll have to bear with me because they might not be up to scratch, but we'll try. I'm going to draw you now 2 different sets. I'm not going to draw you a single, actually. I'm going to draw you one first. Let's go through this. Okay, we've literally just got a circle. This is an area of muscle. Andre, drop one of the coaches a DM. We will be happy to go through these things with you and help you out. Do not worry. Now, I'm going to draw these. See that? These are strands within the muscle. And then surrounding these strands, I'm going to just scribble in here with a bit of blue. It looks a bit like that. Now, what these are, this is the muscle cell fibre. The blue area is called sarcoplasmic fluid. And this is actually the hypertrophy that's referred to, sarcoplasmic hypertrophy. And these red strands are called myofibrils. Now, myofibrils are its actual tissue. It's built through strands of proteins within the muscle. Now, myofibrils are almost superior to sarcoplasmic growth. Correct, Daniel, that's exactly what I'm talking about. What they actually are is extra sort of strands, if you will. The easiest way to think of it is think of a steel wire. You've got very small individual wires, and they're all twisted together to make a steel wire that can be used on, say, for example, a crane or to support a building structure. Very, very strong. That's what myofibrillar hypertrophy is. Now, the difference in growth is very straightforward. I'm going to draw you now two more. Slightly bigger circles. Okay, just like that. The first one we're going to cover is sarcoplasmic hypertrophy. Now, what happens here is the number of myofibril strands remains the same, but the area around those strands increases. Okay, so you've increased the amount. There we go. You've increased the amount of sarcoplasmic fluid. You heard me correctly, fluid. Now, what this does is it volumizes a muscle, okay? So we can make a muscle appear larger. It has very limited application in terms of strength and function, other than a pumped up sort of size. It's not the same as the pump. Before anyone gets confused with that, it's not the same thing. What this does is give the muscle a big appearance. Now we come on to the next type of hypertrophy. And this is the sort of thing that strength training does. So we have very limited increase in, I'm going to have to just get my pens working out, a very limited increase in sarcoplasmic fluid, but you'll notice there's actually more strands of myofibrils. Okay, now these are protein-based strands, so they are muscle fibre strands, or should I say they're the building blocks of muscle fibre down at a very, very small level when you go into the fibres at a tiny level. So when I was talking the steel wire earlier, I'm talking about one individual muscle fibre, not the whole muscle. So all these individual muscle fibres break down into something much, much smaller, just like we break down into our atomic elements, etc. Now, what people don't realise and what people don't look at is the different effects of these two muscles. One of them is predominantly fluid-based versus its original state. And one of them is effectively tissue-based versus its original state. Now, a tissue-based muscle is designed to develop more force, okay? Which is why powerlifters and strongmen and weightlifters, etc., train for this kind of thing. You'll be very familiar with the strength training rep ranges. Tends to be quite low. The sort of 2 to 6 reps we'll go with, for argument's sake. There is crossover between these. There's no definitive line, so don't get too hung up on the detail. But what this does and what it means is when you, or if you have time off training and you're away from training for any particular period of time, the muscle does not really change a great deal in size because it's actually having to break down physical tissue to do that. Now, I've already covered the other one, sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, which is what people say, I'm training for hypertrophy or hypertrophy or however you want to pronounce it, is predominantly fluid-based. This is why you see so many high-level sort of bodybuilders, when they stop training, they vanish or they certainly deteriorate a lot faster than the strength athletes. This is because fluid is very, very easy to disperse. So the reason I'm bringing this up like this is because you guys are predominantly, the predominant goal across the group is fat loss and muscle gain. There's the two most common in this sort of dad aged area. You know, you sort of, if we go to like mid-20s up to sort of like 50s, 60s, whatever, people want to lose fat and they want to gain muscle. Now, building myofibrils in your body is massively energy demanding, massively. At the same time, you want to have an appearance and a shape to the muscle. So you look at the sarcoplasmic side of things, and it's like, oh, which one do I do? Where do I go with this? The simple answer is do both, because you can. Okay, you can do both of these things. It's a method that's referred to, and I've always called it this. It's got no official name, but the affectionate one that's referred to is power building. Now, the reason power building is so effective, and I would strongly advise many of you start adopting this approach, is because A, you focus most of your efforts on big compound lifts, which reduces the amount of time you require to spend in the gym, reduces the amount of time you require away from your families, reduces the amount of mental effort you have to put in terms of thinking, oh, I've got a 3-hour gym session, because you haven't. I'm not going to lie to you, the mental effort inside the gym is going to have to be a lot higher, because these compound lifts are hard, which is why most people shy away from them. They're worried about form and technique, they're worried about this, and what people tend to do is they go, I'm worried about the form with squat, because it's the first power lift. I don't want to do it because it could be potentially unsafe. Very, very true. It could be very unsafe for you. Rather than actually go, let's get this squat sorted, let's figure it out, let's get it sorted properly, let's start low weights, let's put the ego at the door, get this phenomenal exercise done right. They go, oh no, I'll do single leg split squats, or single leg lunges, or I'll squat in the Smith machine, or I'll use a machine instead. And you're robbing yourself of so much effort. It's a perceived effort you're putting in, and you're taking away so much that you could be achieving in there. I mean, it is not the optimal way to go. I'll flat out state that. And there is research to back this up as well. A more recent study actually showed with this particular exercise, it used the leg press, which is a common variation and favourite of people to use, using high foot positions, low foot positions, narrow stances and wide stances versus the barbell back squat. The barbell back squat kicked the leg press's ass in terms of muscular development, both myofibral and sarcoplasmic, in terms of total energy expenditure. So your calories burned straight away, the squat's doing more for you. In terms of neurological growth hormone release, which again is a limited effect, but it will help you rest better and lose more fat. So do not back away from these things, because doing these things are so much better for you than the machines. If you have an injury, I appreciate it. It may not be possible for you, so you're always sensible and work around those things. Back to the power building then. How do we approach this? It's based on muscle fiber types, okay? So let's to put it in a simple fashion, we have fast twitch and slow twitch. There are breakdowns within those, but without boring you with the science of it. And you've effectively got 4 ranges of training, which I'm going to talk to you about. You have where powerlifters excel, the sort of first 2, they will sit in the neurological training zone, which is 1 or 2 reps with maximum weights. They don't technically get stronger, but what they do is they become more neurologically efficient in a lift, and their body becomes more capable of firing a correct sequence of events. Then you have the myofibril range, which is your sort of 2 to 6 reps. And then from your sort of 6 reps up to sort of like 12 reps, you have your sort of sarcoplasmic range. And then above that sort of thing, you start moving into muscular endurance. Depending on the size of the muscle, you might want to sort of like shift those numbers up slightly when you're talking small muscle groups. So power building, the principle is very, very straightforward. You go in and you do your biggest and heaviest movements first. It's not a principle that's new. It's not innovative. It's not something that you've never heard before. You're welcome, James. I'm glad it's of use to you. So go in. So, for example, we're talking, let's say we're dealing with a chest, very popular one. Everyone wants a big, broad chest. So let's deal with that one. So you could go in and you select a big compound movement. And it doesn't have to be the bench press. But if that's the one you choose, that's fine. I actually think a preferable method of building the pecs, if that is what you're going to do, will be a parallel bar dip, affectionately known as the squat for the upper body. So I'm going to focus on that one. You go in very, very heavy, very, very low rep range. So if you're not actually looking to compete in powerlifting, I would suggest sticking at 4 reps plus. So 4 to 6 reps, 4 to 6 sets of 4 to 6 reps, about that sort of range is absolutely perfect. And then you have your secondary movements, which could perhaps be, let's do a flat dumbbell press, dumbbell bench press. So we start moving on to that. And then what we do is we gradually move the range. We don't jump from one to the other. So we've done 5 fives for argument's sake, it's bang in the middle. 5 sets of 5 there. Then we move on to the dumbbell press and we go for perhaps 4 sets of 8 to 10 reps. Yeah, you with me? And then on your next movement, you perhaps move on to something that's a little bit more isolation based. Perhaps a dumbbell fly or a cable crossover or a pec deck. One of those sort of varieties where you're squeezing a bit more, which people like to do, and watch themselves in the mirror while they do it, and create gurning faces, which are highly unattractive, and that is what our wives see. So sympathy for them. But anyway, and then you move into the sort of higher rep range, the sarcoplasmic rep range with that, and you've effectively covered all the bases in just 3 movements. Just 3 movements, you've done it, and you've pretty much covered the entire muscle fiber type. Okay, you've worked the strength range, you're getting stronger with it for a start. You've then spent some time in the sort of crossover period between the 2 major types of myofibril and sarcoplasmic hypertrophy. You've worked those sort of that crossover bridge between the 2. And then you've worked the area where you're getting sort of more of a peak contraction, jumping back into the old Vida principles of training. So you've burnt out your slow twitch fibers, you've burnt out your fast twitch fibers, and you've trained yourself for getting stronger. And this is key because what it means is next time you start coming to this 6-7 months down the line, your sarcoplasmic rep range is going to be a lot heavier because you're getting stronger. So you can actually generate even more growth rather than staying the same if you just sit at that same level working the fluid building sarcoplasmic hypertrophy. So if you focus on those little tiny myofibrils, build them up, build a denser muscle, and then work your way up through the pump. Think of it like a car starting or starting a running race. You start from a dead stop. So your initial acceleration from first step to the 5th step is the maximum change in speed. And then you're gradually building up through the gears. Just like your car, it builds up through the gears as it goes. But always start in that first gear, because just like a car, okay, I know a lot of you guys use automatics across the pond, but if you're familiar with this sort of thing, you ride motorbikes or anything like that, what happens if you start to try and pull off in 3rd gear or 4th gear? You know, it's going to stall because it doesn't want to move in that area. And that's what you're doing to your body. You're not working through the full range and you're getting a limited effect. And just like the vehicle, when you're trying to pull away in 3rd gear, it's going to take you time to get into the actual rev range where it's comfortable to work. Same is true with myofibrillar and sarcoplasmic training. If you just focus on sarcoplasmic training, it will take you longer to reach your size goals than if you focus on working through the myofibrillar range first and then through the sarcoplasmic range. Plus, you will burn more energy, get stronger, and get more flexible doing it. So focus on those key small movements. Focus on those key small muscle fibers which are developed from the big movements. They're building these tiny things, which is really developing everything as a whole, and you'll reach your goals a lot faster. I am Matt Griffiths of G4 Strength and Conditioning, one of the resident coaches here. So drop me a line or drop a comment on here if you want some more information on this kind of thing. I'll try and cover all the sorts of topics and queries and questions along with the other coaches, and keep an eye out because we are doing a group Q&A. We're going to do a roundtable Q&A event where all of the coaches are going to be on live. That is your chance to fire questions at us, to start saying, hey man, I need help with this, I need help with this. We've all got our own specialist areas of expertise. You've got guys there that focus on diet. You've got guys like me that are experts with biomechanics, injury recovery, and psychology. We've all got these different areas. So we're going to come together and give you a service. But you've got to use it. You've got to be there for it. Anthony Ray, thank you. I hope it's been useful to you. I'll be out of here anyway. I'll be around for a bit tonight. So by all means, drop me a line if you've got any queries. And I really do hope you pay attention to some of this and get those goals a little bit faster. Take care, guys.